am back on the Talk Music podcast, and it is always a thrill to talk to one of the greatest drummers of all time. I hope I'm not embarrassed. I'm the one and only Steve Gadd. Steve, how are you?
I'm okay, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm really looking forward to seeing the jazz trio performing in Glasgow in the 1st and 2nd of September. We'll talk about all of that. We'll talk about the tour. But let me just ask, first of all, it's been going for it's kind of like a new band, considering, some of the projects that you've been involved in have lasted such a long period of time. But how did this band come about?
I was I went to do some work for a couple of weeks teaching outside of Copenhagen at this and this event happens every year with different people coming in as teachers. And at this particular period, Michael Blicher, the saxophone player, was there at the school, and the thing that I didn't realize was that a lot of professional musicians that are working, in Europe, go to this thing. It's not just kids. You know what I mean? So I met Michael, and we became friends, and eventually he introduced me to this organ player, Don Hammer, that he those guys had done a lot of things together, and I thought that they had they had a thing going on, and they invited me to be a part of it, and I said yes, and here we are. They're good guys, and they're passionate about what they do, and good people.
The keyboard player. I was watching this band play, the organ player rather, watching this band play, and I was like, "Well, I can't see the bass. Where's the bass?" Right, and I'm looking at different videos, like, what's going on here? This organ player, as you described, is a mad scientist. Explain to everybody why and what's going on with those feet as he's playing.
Well, he plays the bass with his feet, and it's a great sound. It's just you have to sort of play. You have to sort of figure out how to lock in with that, and it's been when we lock it in, man, it's so enjoyable. I love listening to these guys. Michael's got his own way of playing. He writes beautiful songs. It's just I learn, from being with these guys. You know what I mean? So
It's
it's enjoyable.
as well as playing Wembley Arena, with the likes of James Taylor and Eric Clapton. This is what I love about this, is that it's grassroots level. The sax player is also the tour manager. He's driving, at least he was, in the tour a couple of years back. And the band are digging in with the merch. The partners are helping out with all that stuff. What is it like, the kind of juxtaposition of going from Wembley Arena, where there's a gigantic amount of staff involved in absolutely everything to help with the band, for concert ticket sales, for, as we all know, everything that goes along with that, to something so grassroots. What's fun about that for you?
Um, the music, the music is what's fun about all of those things. You know what I mean? And that's always the inspiration. Some of the gigs are, top of the line, and you're treated better than you've ever been treated. But every gig isn't like that. And even though it's not like that, people still want to, because of their passion and their desire to share with people, it's important for them to get out there, and it's nice to be able to support that too, and remember where I came from. So and if I can, and in a way, if I can help these guys get to another level, then that's good. You know, that feels good for me to be able to give something and and have them appreciate it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one thing I'm really looking forward to with the gigs, and in comparison to, like I said, the big arena shows, the intimacy is so is something that's really inspiring as well, to be that close to the band, as I've seen, in a lot of the footage, and that must be very different for yourself as a drummer, going from the big stages to the more intimate venues is great indeed. You
Yeah,
mentioned, sorry, Steve.
go ahead. No, I grew up, you know, my dad used to take me to clubs. Um, and you know, like back in the 50s and 60s, and before big venues became, you know, music venues. And it was a great way for me to learn because I could sit right next to the bandstand and watch the drummers. And so not only could I hear what they were doing, but I could visualize, see it, and it was a great way to learn. You know, I don't think you can learn that way at big venues. It's too, I mean, it's just too, it's too enormous and you're too far away. So it's a different way to listen to music. You know what I mean? And I like both ways, but the more intimate way is special too. You know, and um, and I enjoy that.
You mentioned about, it reminds me of it reminds you of where you came from, as it were. So taking the clock right back, there's that famous picture of you and Gene Krupa, and I'm not too sure what age you were. I don't know if it's 8 or 9, something like that.
Well, that was at a club that's one of the clubs I was referring to. It's called the Ridge Crest Inn, and it was a, you know, it wasn't a big club, probably held a couple of hundred people. Um, but I could sit right next to the bandstand, and then you know, guy, you could on matinee on Sundays they do a matinee thing where they'd let people sit in, and a lot of these like Dizzy Gillespie and Gene Krupa and Kay Winding and Art Blakey, uh, Ray Bryant, they would let other people sit in, and they let me sit in. I was a kid, you know, and it was they were all these great artists were very supportive, and you know they were on a circuit, so they'd probably do the club like two times a year. You know what I mean? Or maybe three, because they just would, it was, they were going from one of those kind of clubs to the other. So they were, you know, so, you know, I would go back and every time get to know them a little bit better. Um, and there were other clubs in Rochester that, that brought in organ groups. And I would do the same thing there. My dad would take me and I get to know these guys, and sometimes you know, the drummers, I'd invite them over to the house for dinner and they'd show me things, and it was a great way to learn, a great way to make friends, and um, it was a good way to grow up, you know.
Going back to Gene Krupa, the old footage that I've seen of him play, of course, the famous drum solos, the whole bit, his presence just really jumps out at the screen. So for you, being such a young kid, watching him a few feet in front of you, what was he like up close?
Oh, he was like a movie star, you know. And when, you know, he had a guy that set up for him, and they'd put they'd put us. There were no lights and stuff in the club, no spotlights or anything. They just lit it so you could see everybody. But Gene Krupa, his guy put a little spotlight down, so when he played a solo, the light went on and lit him up, and it was it was exciting. You know what I mean? And you know, as a kid, that he was bigger than life. You know, uh, it was it was inspiring.
And do you think
And
he had such a big influence in your playing, would you say?
um, yeah, he did. I mean, he had a great groove. Gene
Hmm.
Krupa had a great groove, so that part of his playing was really inspirational. But that led to me, learning about other drummers like Buddy Rich and Louis Bellson, and they all had different things that they did good. Um, and I'm a drummer, man, so I loved all of it.
That's great. I love that era, and I love the footage of you. Oh, forgive me. It's yourself. Is it Dave Weckel, and it's somebody else at the Buddy Rich Memorial? And we might have
Vinny,
chatted. Vinny Calita, of course. How could I forget? That must have been such a thrill being part of that event.
oh yeah, all of those things are thrilling and they're a little nerve-wracking. But I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad they were documented
Mhm.
because if you let your nerves get the best of you and you don't take those opportunities, then you sort of miss out. So I did it.
No, that's great. And you said about nerves and on all the rest of it. I sometimes feel obviously you'll know yourself, and I don't want to embarrass you, but you've got obviously such a great reputation. Everybody, and that must be brilliant. Like so many great musicians, so many great drummers. Likes a Chick Corea just saying that everybody tries to play like Steve Gadd because he's perfect. When there's all these musicians saying that kind of thing, number one, how much of a thrill is that for you? And secondly, do you maybe feel sometimes you've got this big reputation to live up to when you're part of events like the Buddy Rich Memorial and things of that nature? How do you see that all?
Well, those are the feelings you got to fight. The feelings about thinking what people are expecting. I mean, all you can do is the best you can, and let the music, dictate what you're going to do. You know what I mean? Um, so I've been lucky. I mean, I've had a good career, and I feel blessed um, to be able to play music for a living. What was the other part to that question
That's
you asked?
So just asking first of all, how do you when you hear the likes of Chick Corea saying these things, and you hear all these great drummers and musicians being so positive about you and your playing, um,
Right.
you have an awareness of that? Do you try and ignore it and not get too carried away? How do you kind of see that?
I, I'm aware of it. I just it's something that I don't want to disrespect. I don't want to have that be my inspiration. I want my inspiration to be, the drums and playing music the best I can. All of the other stuff is frosting. That's not what I do it for. You know what I mean? And as long as I can keep that in check, you know what I mean? Then it helps me in a lot of different situations. Like if I'm taking a band out on the road, I can get into thinking, well, what's the audience expecting? What do I, and that kind of head takes away from really, if I just go out there and let the music happen, then the rest everything else will take care of itself. So, um, try to keep my ego out of it, uh, and, uh, and, and just keep it pure. You know what I mean? About getting up there and supporting the people you're with, listening to them, and and when you can lock it in that way, then the music starts to really feel good, and it makes you want to play. You know, so I like to get it where the music plays me, not where I'm playing the music.
Very interesting indeed. One of the words that kept coming up in the documentary of this band from yourself was subtlety. That when you're playing, even in drum solos, the subtlety of your playing, and you're saying, you don't need to play that hard. And I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, as a drummer, I'm definitely playing far, far too hard on the kit. You mentioned as well, like there's a level of intensity that you can get, yet still playing so subtle. Is that something that's always came naturally to you? Is that something that's developed over time? How do you see that?
I think it developed over time. You know what I mean? It developed by me being able to be in the studio and hear what I've played. You know, sometimes you think you played something good and you hear it back and it was too busy. You know what I mean? It's like it might have been a great thing drum wise, but it was too busy for the music. And you get a chance to filter, your own playing. And then getting older, uh, it's like I just don't want to go up there and just start playing at level 10. I mean, a lot of times that's what the gigs are. You know what I mean? A lot of the gigs are like you want to get up there and just put the audience against the back wall. You know what I mean? And it's like, but when you get older, that's not as much fun. You know what I mean? And musically, if you can start minimally and create, like some intensity, then that gives you so much. You got so much further to go. You can pick and choose, and you can jump out and get loud and then get soft again. And then when you can build it up to get to where it gets loud, but it doesn't have to start there and stay there. You know what I mean? It's dynamics are a big part of it. You know what I mean? If you start out at a real loud level, you got nowhere to go, you know, except softer. But when you start out that loud, it gets very difficult to think that if you get softer, it's gonna reach the audience. If you start out at that hard level, you sort of the whole gig can be like that, and it's not as much fun. And musically, or on the instrument, on the drums, there's a lot more technically you can do at a moderate level. When you get way up there, man, and playing loud, there's not as much as there's not it's not as controlled, and if you got to stay up there for a long time, it's like it becomes a challenge. You know what I mean? So and that's where it feels like I've got to play the music instead of letting the music play me. You know what I mean? So, but just things that you'll learn as you get older.
Very interesting indeed. Some people that I've interviewed that have actually played alongside me. One of them, we talk about him every time because great player, Nathan East.
Oh,
Um,
Nate.
I remember him saying that meticulous you are, how meticulous you are when it comes to your sound checks. So you'll spend a good bit of time when you're sound checking, like going over, like I want this in my monitor, I want to hear this, I want to hear that. Is that something that you feel is crucially important, just not to rush at that point and just to make sure that you've got everything that you need? And over time, if you made sure that you've got that all sorted out, the older you've got to.
Yeah, because for me, I don't need everything in the monitor, all the time. I need certain things. I need bass. With Nathan East, it's when we were playing with Eric, and I need the guitar and his vocals, but I don't need a lot. I mean, and I like to have the solos and the vocals in, but I don't need all of the pads. And it's not about it's about levels in the monitor, but it's also about ins and outs where I don't, having everything in there all the time doesn't make my job easier. Clearing it out so I can really zero in on what I need to zero in on to play the time and help it groove. A lot of that is like the ins and outs of the monitor, and it changes for every song. So, I end up. It's not an easy gig for the monitor guy with me because it's not like put everything in and leave it. It's it's like making moves so I can hear what I need to hear, and and when it's when you work with good sound people, it's worth taking the time to do that because it makes a difference in how the show goes for me.
And as well, I was saying to my wife, we were watching your stuff online. I just said the toms. This is the best sounding toms that I've heard on a kit, and it's one thing that a drummer, Ben Montgomery, I told people online I was interviewing you today, and did get any questions to message in, and Ben Montgomery, who's a cracking drummer from Scotland, had said that. Just ask him about the tuning of his toms. So this is a thing that a lot of people are picking up on. How long? Who tunes your drums? Are you doing it? And if so, what's that process?
It depends. So it depends on different techs have different fortes that they do. Not all of them tune. They can get them in the ballpark, but then I have to tweak them. And it isn't like having like a specific note that you tune them to. It's like how they respond acoustically to the room that you're in, and how like say the first tom on the bass drum, you can get it to sound good, but if it's triggering the snares to rattle when you hit it, I try to get it so it's just a pure tom sound. So now I got to start dealing with tweaking the snare, changing the tonality of the tom to to make the snares not rattle. So it isn't just about one thing. It's a combination of things. So if you have to lower the pitch of the first tom to keep the snares from rattling, that affects the way you tune all the toms all the way down. You know what I mean? So I mean that it's not about particular notes that you can write down and you always go for. It's different in every hall, and so that's these are the things you got to deal with, um, and that's what makes it interesting, is because it's not the same in every hall. It's different, and you can't play every night the same way because acoustically and the room you're in affects what you can do, especially in smaller venues. You know what I mean? In bigger venues, it's there, but not as not as in your face as like in smaller venues. But it's still something that you have to deal with. So you got to take all of those things into consideration when you're tuning them, so that you start, but the bottom head of the tom will, if you loosen it or tighten it, will make the pitch go higher or lower, and then you start learning that you start tuning the drum, the lower things away from the snare drum. You know, if you tune it real close to the snare drum and tighten it up there, that makes the thing ring more and causes the snare to rattle more. So you got to start dealing with the tom and then dealing with the snare drum. That's just what you have to do.
Nathan East was right when he said you are meticulous, and it's a total education listening to all this, because I'm thinking, right, there's so many things regarding that I've not even taken into account, so that I'll need to do my homework and brush up on for sure. So, do you feel that over time, we mentioned Nathan Easton talking about Eric Clapton? If I can ask a couple of questions about Clapton, if that's okay, because I'm really interested in this process. Um, One of the things we were talking about the last time, you said like how notation, reading drum music, it maybe isn't as necessary as it once was, because of course you're getting tracks sent ahead of time for a gig, so musicians get a chance to prepare, of course. When you're playing with Clapton, I don't know why I'm so interested in this. I can't imagine Eric Clapton sitting down with a MacBook, sending out MP3s to the band, saying, have a check out of these songs. How does that work? Is Eric doing that, or is he saying, right, well, we'll
No,
get in the rehearsal room with less?
we send, if he's got something new, like he'll send that, or he'll send a list of things that we've played and maybe some new ones that are new to me but old to him that I can get offline and listen to them. So it's both ways. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'll ask the guy that does the house sound to send me tracks to listen to. If it's a new thing, like Eric was working on, he would send something, on the computer, that he had done at home, and just to get to know it. So it's done all different ways, but he's hands-on though. So, and I like that.
Oh, that's great. That's interesting. I love the idea of just Clapton sitting down, recording something on his phone, just saying, "Hey, Steve, check this out. We'll work on this next week." So that's great that he's so hands on. When you first got the call from him to go and play, obviously by this point in time, you've both been around a while, but he's a household name. I always the picture I always remember is the women walking by on the wall, Clapton as God, Hendrix's favorite guitar player, just an absolute almost religious figure. How much of a thrill was that when you first got the call and got to play with Eric for the first time?
Oh, it was a tremendous thrill. I mean, whenever I get the opportunity and the call to play with him, it's a thrill. Um, and I love those gigs. And it doesn't always happen. Sometimes, there's conflicts of schedule, and he can play with whoever he wants to. So he can try different things, and he likes to do that. But yeah, whenever I love the opportunity to play with Eric. He's a great musician and a good man, and I love him. Good guy.
11 nights at the Royal Albert Hall. I just obviously been a fan. What's that like, setting up the drum kit at the Royal Albert Hall and knowing that it's going to stay there for the next 10 nights?
Well, I don't think I've done 11. Did I do 11 nights there?
It says online you did the 11th, but I will trust that if you say it's not true, then I believe you.
Well, I mean,
Have you
I know I've done the Albert Hall with him, multiple nights, but I don't know if I'm not sure. He did another one, right? Where didn't he do 18 nights there too, or something like
really
that?
18 nights?
I can't remember, but that might have been Steve Ferroni
Right, okay.
that did the 11 nights, and I have done the Albert Hall multiple nights, but never 11 in a row, I don't think.
Well, they might be able to dispel a couple of myths here, right? Because I've taken a note of this. I always get fast. Every time I talk, I know that I'm going to chat to you. I have a look up at the career and all the rest of it, and I'm always flabbergasted with a couple of facts that I didn't know. And apologies if this is not true, right? But I'm just going to name an artist that according to the internet, that you've played with, and you can just give me an idea of what happened, because some of the information is hard to find exactly whether it was a record, whether it was a live thing. So I'm just going to name an artist, and you tell me what the script was. John Bon Jovi.
Um, just we've done some charity work together, but like we're events where he's an artist and I'm in the house band. I've never recorded, one of his albums with him. But we know each other, and and he's always, you know, nice to hang out with, man. You know, and
That would
he's a
have been
great artist.
that would have been quite a moment if that was him phoning you right there. That would have been
Yeah, it
something
wasn't.
else.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Aretha Franklin.
Uh, I did some recording with Aretha, and and a couple of charity events, but not enough for her to really, for us to really know each other, you know. But I'm a big fan of hers, and she wrote the book on
Hmm.
how to sing.
Brilliant. And then there's the list here is unbelievable. Michael McDonald, Diana Ross, Bee Gees, Frank Sinatra. It's quite the CV. You must is there out of the artists that I just named there, is there any that stand out to you that think, oh, that was a great experience? That I remember doing this, I remember doing that. Were a lot of these kind of one-off recordings? Is anything anything that stands out for you?
You know, with Barry Gibbs, I did a bunch of albums that he was producing. Well, Dionne Warwick, Diana Ross, he produced. Um, I can't remember. You know, he did some of his own things, but he was a great producer. Went to Florida and worked. I got to meet his brothers. Um, you know, we're you know, if I called, you know, he would take my call. Not like we're in touch all the time, but you know, we know each other. You know what I mean? We worked long enough to know, you know, to know each other. We don't always talk, but if I called, he'd pick up the phone and say hello.
It's quite something to play on a record of Diana Ross with a BG as the producer. That's that's something else.
Yeah.
It's really great. Moving back onto drums. You said Aretha Franklin wrote the book, so that's my nice link on to remind everybody that the book that Steve wrote, released in 2021, Gaddaments, which is I've got it somewhere in here. A great book. We spoke about it at length in the last interview. You said there might be a part two. You've obviously been very busy on the road the last couple of years. Any further forward on that? Any thoughts to maybe do that in the future? What can you tell us?
I've been, you know, I have been working on it. I, excuse me, I've discovered some new things that I've been playing my whole life, and it's amazing that, you know, if you take the time and uh, you know, new things start to appear, and so that's been the case. You know, when COVID happened, I started, you know, in order to stay in shape, I figured I'd just, you know, keep warming up like I did before a show, 10, 15 minutes to just keep my chops together, and not having a gig to go to made a 10-minute warm up turn into an hour or 2 hours without even thinking about it. And it got me back into just playing on a table and working on different stickings. And and I like doing that. And it's so these new things have come to me. And I like sharing this information. I just want to. I want to play it enough to know which ones are meaningful and which ones aren't. And that's the only way that happens is just by spending time with the stuff. And so I'm not sharing things that are a waste of time. I'm sharing things that I think are helpful in terms of strengthening your hands, in terms of phrasing musically, you know what I mean? And just ways that where you're doing things, you're doing an exercise that not only helps you technically, but it helps you musically, it helps you feel wise. So it's a combination of everything when you're working on them.
My favorite, I told you at the time there, if you remember, the Flaminucci combo is something that still keeps me up at night. The Flaminucci combo. Um, what a great rudiment that is. And of course, it's there's a lot of flams in the book, and I can remember like a couple of weeks ago I watched a bit of footage of yourself, and you were saying that you do a lot of that when practicing. You do a lot of flams. You incorporate that a lot because you said, and it's so simple. As soon as you said it, I thought that just makes so much sense. It's making you work so much harder as a drummer.
It just, it's when you work this way on a pad or on a table and do stickings and then alternate the same sticking starting with the left and right, you find out one hand helps the other. You know what I mean? You need the right hand to get the left hand to do these things. And when you play flams, they work the hands a little bit harder. So they're not only things that sound good, but they're really helping your hands. You're strengthening your chops. Instead of working on the left, if we're right-handed, our left hand feels a little bit weaker than our right. And these kind of exercises help strengthen that. And it's just something that I've learned over the years, and even my own technique is since I've been practicing these things, it's improved just by working on these exercises, So I'm happy about that, and I like sharing it, and I like hearing how other people feel about it, because the whole idea is to share something that will help somebody else. And I think that those things do. Do you like those exercises? Do you feel like they help your chops without having to work on your hands separately? You do them together, and you get stronger. Your hands just get stronger. I mean, that's the way it works for me.
Yeah, I felt that I remember you telling me that the kind of intention from the book was like you're kind of broadening your horizons with different rudiments. So I felt that when I was prior to that book, I was like going to the practice pad and doing the usual stuff that I do and doing along with click and trying stuff that's maybe try it a little bit faster, try it in a different way. But I felt that it was almost like a blank canvas, as it were, when it started getting right into gaddaments. Because try not, particularly, I know we're laughing about it, but the Flaminucci combo, and it's been a while since I've done it. Was that not the one, or there was something similar that was almost like I think it was like a bar of 7/4, which really kind of kept throwing me off. And I actually did it and recorded it in Hudson when the book was being advertised. You probably didn't see it, but Hudson were putting up videos of like people that were trying exercises from the book. So they put up a video of me doing Flaminucci combo around the kit. I'll send you it because it's just I think I did a variation on it that I thought was quite interesting. So I'd love to send that to you and see what you think. But it was just an interesting groove around the kit. And of course, if you take that in a band situation, you'll know this way better than I do. It forces other musicians to go, that's a different way of looking at it. So it's got layers upon layers. So to answer your question, yeah, I find the book to be really, really useful. And I teach over here in Scotland, so I've given it to many different students and shown them parts of it. So I can't wait for a part 2.
Oh, thank you, man. I'm working on it, so I'll get it out as soon as I can.
No, it's great. So and you spoke the last time saying how proud you are of the book, and when you see I think it was Steve Smith he's online, when it was only out a few days, and he's doing all these like exercises around the kit. Is it great to see the book taking on a life of its own in a way when you see Steve Smith, when you see Dom Famularo doing all these things from the book? What's that like?
Well, it's great because it's not just about playing, with the book, but I like the fact that it inspires people to do that stuff in different ways. It's good that they do what's in the book, but I think the book is meant to like get you to think about doing doing everything a little bit. It's supposed to open your mind. I'd like it to open your mind creatively, so you start coming up with your own little ideas, like variations on what you read in the book that are things that the book inspired, but are comfortable for you to do. You know what I mean? So I like that. That's the goal.
Yeah, well, you're doing you've written this book, and just as we're talking about this, it's coming to my mind. My go-to rudiment when I do the practice pad is the first warm-up exercise in Gaddaments, where it's like sing, single stroke roll, double stroke roll, paradiddle, paradiddle.
Mm-hmm.
That one, and that's just like really addictive. I'd never done that, and it's so. I mean this in a really good way. It's so simple. The thought of that, you're linking the single stroke roll to the double stroke roll, and then you're doing the paradiddle, and it's half the speed. And then I think the next exercise is perhaps that varied, and it starts on the left hand, but it's just like that's incorporating everything, and that's the first page of the book from my recollection. So I use that one all the time as well. And it's just great stuff.
Yeah, it's good to, you warm up. It's like, you have to, you can't start playing, playing hard and loud. I think you have to warm up and get the blood flowing. So because if you overdo it, you could you strain yourself, and then things don't feel comfortable for a long time. So so even if you're playing every day, it's good to start out easy warming up. And if you haven't played for a while, it's imperative that you start out easy so you don't hurt yourself. You know what I mean? And so I learned that the hard way, and I don't want other people to do that. If I'm going to put that information out there so they know the difference, and know why.
And sorry, I'm on rudiments now, so you've got me thinking about all this stuff. So I'm going to continue geeking out on rudiments if it's okay. Another one that I love that you do is doing the flam paradiddle and then going into the flam tap. You've done that quite a bit. That's really addictive. That's a really addictive rudiment. That
It's it sounds like a flamadiddle, but it really starts with a flam tap.
yes.
You know what I mean? It's like a flam paradiddle.
Yeah.
But you can only get that so fast because you got 3 beats on one hand. Because of the 3 beats, you can only get it so fast. But when you start with a flam tap, you can get it a lot faster, just because of the stick. It sounds the same. So there's a lot of things that sound the same that are different stickings, and I like to find ways to do it comfortably. You know what I mean? Because if you're comfortable, then that helps the groove, that helps the feel. If it's not comfortable, it's not gonna, if you're scuffling to play it, it's not gonna help the feel or the groove. So you can find different alternate stickings that sound like other rudiments but that are, you can play faster. So, and that's what I've sort of discovered, and I'm trying to put different combinations of those different stickings together, and so that's what I'm working on now.
Love it. It's great. And one final word, final thing to bug you about drumming wise. See, when you're playing traditional grip, do you alternate between the 2 fingers there? I'll see if I can get a drumstick to tell you what I'm talking about. So when to try and get speeds, do you like alternate and between the thumb and the finger? If you're playing on a pad, do you like do that thing? Where you're
I don't do it. I mean, whatever my left hand is doing, let me get a pair of sticks.
talking to Steve Gadd, the Talk Music podcast. Of course, a reminder to everyone, if you're watching this prior to the 1st or the 2nd of September, you can see Steve in Glasgow, just down the road, the Macintosh Church to be exact. And here he comes, and he's got the rubber tips on his sticks, which I bought after you showed me the last time. Brilliant.
Yeah. So So my left hand is what I try to do. I start out by trying to keep it. I start out by being real concentrated on trying to keep my hand like this, because this finger straight out and the little finger tucked in. That helps. When I concentrate on that and start doing it slow, it helps loosen up all of this stuff in here. And then after I've done that for a while, then you can sort of relax a little bit. Those are some of the new stickings that I've discovered. Those are some of the stickings that I'll put in the new book, and it's based on a lot of it is based, that flam paradiddle that we did the different sticking on, that starts out on flam tap. Mm-hmm. So it starts out with a flam tap, and then it's all doubles until and then there's some singles at the end of the exercise. So it's the opposite of a paradiddle. Paradiddles go, and this one goes. And then you extend it. So you're using mostly doubles. All there are rudiments, you use mostly singles and doubles at the end, right? Paradiddles. But these use doubles at the beginning. And it's not hard, but it's different from what we normally do. So it takes a minute to get used to it. and and they flow good. Uh, they inspire different rhythms. I just that's just what I've been working on. Those things.
That's great. I remember remember the last time I was showing you that thing. Do you remember? Can I do that?
Oh yeah.
That's the big band thing. We doing it? Yeah. You spent. Well, you
Can't
do
do-
the. No, it's like you do that there. Oh,
Yeah.
but no, all these things are great. Extremely addictive. Um, so the last time, in fact, before we finish up, just to remind everybody, Glasgow, 1st and 2nd of September. Steve Gadd will be playing. Of course, the amazing trio, still tickets available. It's highly likely at this stage to be a sellout. And of course, if you're not in Scotland, there's a tour of the UK, and then Steve's also going to Italy and then Japan. So regardless of where you are in the world, there'll be multiple opportunities to see this man. And what's the plans after the tour? What's in the pipeline that you can tell us about, Steve? Aside from book two, of course.
Well, then after the Blicher Hemmer Gadd thing, then I'm going out with my own band with Mike Landau and Walt Fowler, Travis Carlton, and Larry Goldings.
Yep.
So we're going to be coming to Europe and going to Japan too. So that's so that between Blicher Hemmer Gadd and my own thing, I'll be going from the end of this month till probably towards the holidays.
Excellent. Well, Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you again. So,
Yeah.
everybody, please go on. Check out Steve's official website as well. Don't forget, the link is below wherever you're watching this. Of course, if you're listening, make sure you get along and see Steve and his own band, or indeed in the trio coming up. Steve, as usual, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks, man. Good to talk to you.